Imagine a life that starts in, these quiet towns in Mississippi, but then takes this sharp turn through intense Marine Corps training, propels you into controlling cutting-edge tech over global conflicts, and somehow this thread of amateur sports just runs right through it all. How do these different paths actually come together?
It's a great question, and the material we've got today, biographical bits, military records, family stories, some personal thoughts, it gives us a really good chance to unpack a life like that. We're diving into this story of Jesse William Shanks Jr., who really embodies this unique blend of military leadership and this deep passion for sports.
Exactly. We have this collection of stuff that traces his journey from his roots all the way up to becoming a full colonel and an AWACS mission commander. And like you said, that sports connection, it's always there. It seems like a core part of him.
Yeah, so our mission here is really to dig into these materials. We want to pull out those key moments, the decisions, the experiences that highlight this specific path. How did growing up where he did, going through that intense early military stuff, and keeping sports so central, how did all that intersect to make him the leader he became?
Let's get into it. We start, like a lot of stories, right at the beginning. Mississippi, Jesse William Shanks Jr., born in Summerall in 1936, and then grew up mostly in Purvis.
And the family background of the material, it shows these really deep roots in the community, especially in law. His father, Jesse William Shanks Sr., started out as a teacher, but then went into law, even served as a state legislator. And his father, J.W. Shanks, was also an attorney back in Summerall. There's this clear line of law and public life.
And his father's legal career, just based on these accounts, sounds kind of wild. Think about the cases. There was one involving a pig that notably had a female jury, which must have been pretty unusual then, right? And he contested an election. He lost by just one single vote, plus handling the defense in an interracial cohabitation case. These weren't simple things. These were cases right in the thick of the social and political issues of the time.
It's really interesting to think about how maybe watching his father deal with those tricky legal issues, needing careful judgment, strategic thinking, how that might have subtly shaped young Jesse Jr. That kind of early exposure to complexity, it could definitely lay some groundwork for, say, military command later on.
Yeah, good point. So moving into his high school years in Purvis, the material paints him as really active, especially in sports. Played football, basketball, baseball, got recognized as Al DeSoto in basketball.
But it wasn't only sports, right? He was also involved in student council, yearbook, and there's this one note about him being remembered as a very good actor.
Ah, a good actor too.
Yeah, so you already see these hints of a well-rounded person balancing different things. You got the teamwork, the physical side of sports, but also leadership and student council, and maybe that adaptability you see in drama. Qualities that, arguably help both an athlete and a military leader, which brings us to a pretty big decision point right after high school.
The accounts mentioned he was thinking about a scholarship to NC State for college, but that didn't work out.
So instead of college right away, he makes this pivot, and it seems absolutely foundational for everything that followed. He decides to join the Marine Corps, signed up for a 2-year active hitch, plus 3 years in the reserves.
And this is where we get some really powerful stuff directly from him in the materials. His description of Marine Corps basic training at Parris Island around 56, it's stark. He called it a 12-week course of hell and survival. Wow, get this. He started with 102 recruits in his platoon. Only 42 graduated. Less than half made it through. That number alone just tells you how incredibly tough it must have been. And his reflection on it is really something. He's quoted saying he would not ever do that again for $1 million, but would not take $1 million for having the experience.
Would not take $1 million for having the experience. That really lands, doesn't it? He directly credits those weeks, that pure stress and challenges at Parris Island, for shaping his standards later on. His respect for people, regardless of rank, and crucially, his ability to make hard calls under pressure.
Yeah, we're trying to connect the dots here. That Marine Corps experience, that crucible, is clearly where this bedrock of discipline, resilience, and just making decisions when things are tough was formed. It's fundamental. It shaped him in ways that would benefit him throughout his whole career, no matter which branch or role he was in later. That intensity is key.
Definitely a strong foundation laid there. But let's circle back to that sports thread we mentioned earlier. The material talks about his college basketball career at Southeastern Louisiana University.
And what's cool is it wasn't just something he did before his military career got serious. Even after college, he kept playing. He was on this really strong amateur all-star team, played in the Picayune annual basketball tournament. Apparently, these were big community events, fundraisers, and pretty competitive too.
He remembered that team really fondly, called it probably the very best coordinated and most outstanding group of players I'd ever played with before or since. He talked about the carefree days, great memories, friendships made on the court that lasted a lifetime. And yeah, even making a fair chunk of pocket change playing. It wasn't just messing around.
It was important, built connections. And this sports thing, it didn't stop when his military career really kicked off. The material shows. He kept playing and coaching basketball teams, volleyball teams throughout his assignments, even when he was stationed at the Pentagon.
That really underlines how sports wasn't separate from his military life. It was woven right into it. The material specifically points out how, as a coach and player on these teams, he was interacting with everyone in the unit hierarchy. Generals, colonels, junior officers, enlisted folks.
That's such a critical point. It creates this unique space outside the normal chain of command to build rapport. And speaking of the Pentagon, there's a story written by his son Jesse III that tells a great one about the time Captain Shanks coached the Grays, a ragtag Little League team in Fairfax, Virginia during the late 60s.
Wait, Captain Shanks coached kids? That's like finding out General Patton ran a summer arts camp.
Oh, it gets better. Picture this. Shanks, stationed at the Pentagon, couldn't make the tryouts or the draft for the league. So what does he do? He just scoops up every last undrafted kid left. The leftovers. The land of misfit toys, but with baseball gloves.
Wow. So it's Bad News Bears, but real? Please tell me one of the kids wore glasses the size of dinner plates and had a chip on his shoulder.
Pretty much. There was Dan Huskerson at third base. He wore hearing aids in both ears, but had silky smooth glove work. A shortstop channeling Ed Brinkman. And their pitcher? A wiry kid named Kurt Weitzel, who threw from the side like he was skipping stones, and nobody could hit him.
This team sounds like a Disney movie written during a fever dream. Please tell me they wore weird uniforms.
Oh, they did. Gray and purple, like if sadness and grape soda had a baby. They were called the Grays, which is either incredibly poetic or just what was left in the laundry pile.
And Captain Shanks made them win?
Won the first half of the season straight out the gate. Not with power, not with superstar talent, but with smart base running, bunting, and the kind of teamwork that only happens when your coach also commands USAF flight crews. The man was chill but exacting, if that makes sense.
Like a Zen general. What do they call that in the Air Force? Calculated command present?
He made each kid understand their role. No illusions, no pressure, just confidence. It was like a Jedi mind trick, but for Little League. Jesse said they all went up to bat believing they were going to succeed, and more often than not, they did.
And the team they beat in the championship was?
Totally forgotten. That's the best part. Jesse doesn't even remember. Just that they won in full Bad News Bears fashion. Scrappy, unlikely, united.
That says everything, doesn't it? The lesson wasn't who they beat, but how they played. And honestly, you can trace that whole leadership style right into Shanks' military career.
Exactly. He trained his air crews the same way. Play your part, know your strengths, trust your team. They even called him Uncle Jesse at Tinker Air Force Base, a warfighter with dad energy.
Okay, but can we bring back Bat Day at the ballpark? Because that detail hit me hard.
Right? They'd get their baseball gear at Senators games. Hat Day, Ball Day, Sunglasses Day. It was like spiritual conditioning for fandom.
You're telling me the man raised a championship team and taught his son leadership using minor league promotions and Frank Howard as guiding lights?
Basically, Jesse Shanks, inspiring both strike zones and squadron zones.
I'd say put that on a plaque, but it feels like it already belongs on the side of a military aircraft.
Trust, understanding across ranks. That kind of interaction really helps with unit cohesion, reliability, and it pushes excellence in a less formal way. The material explicitly links this sports involvement to developing military leaders, touching on that warrior-athlete idea, how the discipline, teamwork, and competitive drive from sports translates directly to being a more effective leader.
And there's this fantastic little story from his time at Trax Field that just perfectly captures this. He played in a charity basketball game with the base team against the NFL champion Green Bay Packers.
No kidding, the Packers?
Yeah. Can you imagine these huge football guys playing basketball? The account says they were actually surprisingly quick and athletic on the court, and the game came down to the wire and the winning play. Only the Packers could do this. Their famous kicker, Don Chandler, grabs the basketball and literally kicks it towards the hoop for the winning field goal.
Kicked it?
That's amazing. Only Don Chandler. It's just a great, memorable moment showing how sports can create these unique connections, even bridging military life and pro sports for a fun event. So, okay, he's got this marine discipline, this continuous sports thread, building leadership and teamwork, and then comes a big professional shift.
Right. In 1962, after Officer Training School, OTS, down at Lackland Air Force Base, he makes the switch from the Marines and joins the U.S. Air Force as a commissioned officer.
His first few assignments in the Air Force, the records show, were as a weapons director in the Air Defense Command. He was stationed up in places like Key Sawyer Air Force Base in Michigan and Trex Field near Madison, Wisconsin. This seems to be where he really started specializing in that complex job of, tracking aerial threats and directing responses.
Yeah, that was a crucial building block. It gave him that foundational experience in air command and control, which, as we'll see, became really central to where his career went next.
Which leads us to maybe the biggest career choice detailed here. After 5 years stationed over in Naples, Italy, he had a decision to make for his next assignment. Option A, a more standard office job at MacDill AFB in Florida. Option B, jump to something brand new, super high-tech, called AWACS, based out at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma.
And he chose AWACS. Took the path less traveled, you could say. Opted for the innovative tech challenge. His humorous take on it, according to the material, was that after years overseas, he felt his body was ready for Central Time. A bit of a joke, but it shows he was willing to embrace something new and tough over maybe the more comfortable route. This is where his career really brings together that military warrior side with truly cutting-edge technology. AWACS, the Airborne Warning and Control System. This was like a newly established, incredibly complex system, not just radar. It was designed for long-range detection, aircraft, ships, vehicles, and critically performing command and control. Basically battle management from the air, directing fighters and attack aircraft in real time. We're talking about those distinctive Boeing E-3 Century planes with the big rotating dome on top.
And the strategic timing here is fascinating. AWACS was just emerging as a primary way of projecting U.S. military power in the late Cold War. Moving into the 80s, getting involved then meant being right at the forefront of military tech strategy, airborne command.
And his specific job at Tinker wasn't just flying on the plane. It was to basically remake and refine the training program for this incredibly complex brand new weapon system. That's a huge responsibility, making sure the crews taking these vital planes into potentially hostile skies were absolutely ready for battle management. Speaks volumes about his expertise and the trust placed in him.
Yeah, and the accounts, including this really insightful piece from Airman magazine in 1985, they really highlight how demanding AWACS duty was. Crew members averaged something like 117 days a year away from home. Constant deployments.
One quote mentions deploying 4 times in just 5 years.
Wow, that's a serious operational tempo. Clearly put a lot of strain on families, which the material acknowledges the need for good support systems. But despite all that, the mission itself, people saw it as incredibly rewarding. That Airman magazine quote says, "It was the best job and the most rewarding mission I've ever been associated with." If a person is willing to dedicate himself and work hard, AWACS is the way to go.
That dedication, that willingness to work hard, embrace the challenge, you could almost trace a line back to the Marine discipline, the sport's competitiveness. It wasn't just flying, it was complex systems, fast decisions, leading a team under intense pressure. And that preparation, well, it definitely got put to the test in major operations.
Absolutely. The material details his deployment to the Persian Gulf for Operation Desert Shield and then Desert Storm from August 90 through February 91.
He was right there, involved in really critical, high-stakes parts of that war. E-3 aircraft using the kind of training he helped build. We're doing the airborne control for some of those first complex strike packages against Iraq. When Desert Storm kicked off in January 91, he was also involved in Operation Proven Force.
The stats they give for AWACS during Desert Storm are just staggering, really speak volumes. Over 7,000 combat hours flown, an incredible 91% mission-capable rate, and they controlled almost 32,000 strike sorties and over 20,000 air refueling missions. Those aren't just numbers on a page. They represent the unbelievable work of those AWACS crews managing what was at the time the most complex air campaign ever. Just required intense precision, constant coordination, highly skilled people operating flat out. A direct reflection of the training and leadership in that community, which he was right in the middle of shaping.
And as the material notes, he rose through the ranks to full colonel, a major achievement in a long career. He got numerous awards and decorations, Legion of Merit, multiple meritorious service medals, the Air Medal, various unit awards, and one particularly significant honor mentioned is his induction into the Weapons Controllers Hall of Fame.
That Hall of Fame induction really points to his lasting impact in his specific field: air defense, airborne battle management, his recognition from his peers, from the institution about his contributions. So, after this really remarkable military career, blending the warrior ethos, cutting-edge tech leadership, the material also gives us a peek into his family life and retirement. We learned about his wife Doris, his sons Jesse III, John, and James, and granddaughters Jessica and Rachel.
Yeah, and there's some poignant details, especially about his son John's life. John had his own military service, academic success, like winning the College Bowl, worked at Apple in Austin, but then faced illness and passed away too young. The materials mention the close family support during that incredibly tough time. It's just a reminder of the personal side, the sacrifices often involved in military life. His wife, Doris, has also mentioned her loyalty to Apple because of John and working with Jesse and Debbie on their website and a family history project.
It's a really nice thread of family connection there. So for Jesse and his wife Doris, retirement eventually brought them to San Marcos, Texas.
But retirement wasn't just sitting back. The material mentions he kept serving his community, including on the waterport, and it highlights lots of travel. He and Doris went to Key West, Hawaii, Missouri, along with trips back to Mississippi and exploring Texas. A different kind of exploring, but still active, still engaged.
And bringing it full circle to that theme that keeps popping up, sports passion, it never faded. The material notes his sports fandom, a Washington Commanders fan deep in Cowboys country.
Brave man.
And siding with Texas over Oklahoma in college sports. But crucially, he kept going to the Southeastern Louisiana University basketball reunions. That shows that deep, lasting connection to his athletic past, those friendships, the experiences from the court.
So when you pull all these threads together, the small-town Mississippi roots, the Marine training intensity, the pioneering work with AWACS Tech, commanding in combat,
and that constant presence of amateur sports.
What's the big picture of Colonel Jesse Shanks Jr.'s journey?
Well, it feels like a story where discipline, teamwork, leadership weren't just things learned in a classroom or, on a drill field. They were forged on the basketball court, hardened in that brutal Marine training, and then really tested in the high-stakes world of global command and control. That warrior-athlete idea, it doesn't feel like just a label here. It feels like it actually describes the core skills and character that took him from Purvis, Mississippi to commanding E-3s during wartime. Yeah, his life story, as we see in these different sources, is just a powerful example of how seemingly separate experiences and passions, where you grew up, specific tough challenges you faced, embracing new technology, and sticking with team sports can all weave together and build on each other to shape a really unique career, especially one focused on leadership and service.
It's that blend that's so compelling, isn't it? That journey from high school hoops and Paris Island grit all the way to the command deck of an AWACS, overseeing thousands of combat flights high over the Persian Gulf.